I'm proud to announce that the podcast is now officially sponsored by the fine people over at Chop Chili Company. Guys, this is some of the best chili you can get here in the state of New Mexico, and they are online as well as in stores. They can be found at Smith's, Albertsons, Sprouts, John Brooks, and Lowe's Corner Market. They have 3 amazing flavors that you see here, and they also have frozen green chili that you can get online. Go on over to the website, chopchilico.com, and get yourself some amazing chili today. There it is.
That came from somewhere deep. Hey, look, it sounds better.
Yeah, there we go. So, all right, what we're going to do is we're going to fucking... okay, so we're going to level that out there. Those two are still muted, so that's fine. And then we're definitely going to mute you. And then we're going to fucking just keep it... Wait. My big fat ass. Okay, so we're going to keep it right there. And then... okay, so just use this. We're going to leave that right there because it's still picking up for whatever fucking reason. So, use this to mute and unmute yourself. Okay, we're turn it down a little bit. And then that's going to stay at normal levels. We should be okay. Don't know what the fucking issue is, but this is how we learn. Right?
Alright, how we fix problems.
Sure.
Alright. So you just want to take the loop off, throw us back on. We're still live, but...
Que bueno.
Okay. Because, whoa, I'm fucking loud. Okay. We should be good,
Nice.
though. I mean, that's
Cool.
fine. I don't give a shit.
Cool.
Springer, can you hear us in your headphones?
Nope.
Yeet. Oh.
One problem at a time. We'll just stick with this one. What the fuck?
You can hear it on the stream, though.
Oh, that's way loud.
Beat.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So we can't turn it up past, like, too far past where we were because when he spoke, it shot into the red. So, we'll just run it for now, see how it goes.
Fuck people do it.
Yeah, fuck it, literally, right? Okay.
Cool.
Okay, so your dad was he was working as an electrical apprentice through college.
Yeah.
And he had that already in his repertoire, and then so now your brother, your oldest brother is born.
Mm-hmm.
And then so where does that lead your parents into?
Yeah, so then my dad decides to just pivot slightly and do musical theater instead. And so he auditioned for touring Broadway shows. And he got into a few. And so he did that for several years, basically. Yeah, from when my brother was born up until I was like 4-ish, like 3 or 4. And yeah, and he made like he made decent money while he was doing that, but he just like hated being away from his family and stuff. So by the time I was 3 or 4, he was kind of done with it. He was able to. It was cool because actually some of my earliest memories are actually going on this one sort of West Coast tour with him, and so like I remember like seeing stuff in Seattle and like the Monterey Bay Aquarium and like
That's cool.
certain things like that are like my core memories.
And so did your mom still perform, or was she taking more of the role of the housewife?
Right. Yeah. So she kind of stepped back at that point and was pretty much just watching us kids. But after he stopped doing that, she started like teaching privately, teaching voice privately, and she still does that to this day. And then my dad, he just kind of jumped around with different like salesy, insurance-y kind of jobs for a long time. So
Right. So as your mom transitions into voice lessons, you end up getting into it. Did you end up getting taught by her at all? Because I imagine keeping it in-house kind of saves time, saves money.
Yeah, like a little bit. I think it was like good. It pretty much up until like high school when I did the Santa Fe Opera thing. Which I think was like a good thing to do because it was nice to have her up to a point, and then it was like, I don't know. It's more motivating to learn from somebody who's not your mom sometimes.
Well, I would imagine that, like, obviously, you know, she has talent and she has knowledge and good things to impart on you, but you would, with something like that, I mean, with anything you're trying to learn, I'd imagine you would want a unbiased opinion, but certainly something is like intangible as singing, because like generally speaking, there's like a spectrum of a good singer, a good vocalist, but then you have these fucking outliers where they're traditionally, they don't have a good voice, but they're talented.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, like the fucking the original singer for AC/DC. What's his name? I thought you would know. Fuck. The original singer from AC/DC, Very non-traditional voice, but great.
I can't think of anyone besides Angus.
Angus Young. Yeah,
That's
that's his name.
sing?
Yeah, that's his name. Angus Young. Yeah, him, and then the lead singer for Rage Against the Machine, Zach De La Rocha.
De La Rocha.
Yeah, Rocha, De La
Roca,
Roca.
whatever it
Yeah. He doesn't traditionally have a great voice, but it's great. And then I think the most obvious one is Bob Dylan.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah, for
like
sure.
not a great voice, but he's talented for some reason.
Yeah,
So yeah, something like that. You
like
kind of
Tom Waits.
Yeah, yeah. You want something that's someone that's non-biased.
Yeah.
You know, for you. So who? Well, actually, before I ask about your vocal lessons, so at what point did your dad kind of start saying, "Hey, this is you're getting into some deep waters here. This is very risky. Like, I've lived this life. This is what it turned out for me."
Right.
When did he first start having that actual conversation with you?
Pretty much high school.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I had no idea what I wanted to do coming out of high school. For I think a variety of reasons, but it was like I was very steeped in doing music and drama stuff in high school.
Like be more in the arts.
But I had that thing in the back of my mind that was like, don't do it. Like, it's a bad idea.
Did you have that before your dad told you? Or was that something that he told you?
I just had no idea. I just didn't think about my future, to be honest.
Who the fuck did at the ages of 14 to 17?
Right. And so, I just had no clue. And it was also like the kind of thing that even if I had wanted to try to, and I wouldn't have wanted to pursue, I don't think like anything with opera or anything like that. I might have considered doing more acting stuff, but now that I haven't done literally any of that since like high school, I'm like, I'm probably never going to do that again. But yeah, there was like, even if I had wanted to try to like make it with like a band or something, it was like I didn't really have a band to try to do that with. So it's like you can't just manufacture that. Like you have to know when there's something you like to do. Yeah. Like if I had really wanted to, maybe I could have moved somewhere and tried to find that. But I also just I don't know. I'm like a pretty risk averse person in general too.
You're in the arts?
Yeah, for sure. And so I just ended up like going to CNM and doing that.
So as a kid, because in high school, at the time in high school, you think you're an adult and you think you know what's up, and at least for a couple of things in your life, but really, you're a kid. So at that point, do you remember because how old were you? Like 15, 16 when you had that conversation with your father?
Yeah, probably like 16 or 17 for the first time. Yeah.
So looking back, how do you think your brain digested that? Because I remember being that age, and whenever I would get advice, both poor and good, from adults, I'd be like, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. I know what I'm doing. I
think I really wanted the stars to align.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah, I get it. I get it.
I was waiting for a sign.
That's how my brain worked back then, too.
Yeah.
I get it.
Legitimately.
I get it.
And I think also just because of, I was, raised, pretty religious and stuff, too. And I think I just kind of thought that's how the world was going to work. It was God's on my side. Everything's going to work out. I could be, Jesus' main man. It...
we're laughing because we've had conversations like that because we both grew up that way. I'm still Christian, but I'm just more realistic.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, same here. But at the time, and also just because of the context I grew up in, I just thought the future was going to be so much more crazy. And not to say that the world isn't fucking crazy.
Yeah.
But I honestly was just Jesus is probably going to come back before I can even accomplish anything as an adult. From just the context I was raised in, honestly.
Listen, man, I didn't even plan on making it this far.
Yeah.
Why are you guys planning? Why are you asking me what I'm going to do with my life? I'm 20. How did I make it this far? I don't know.
Yep. Yeah, and so I don't know. There was like a milieu of things that basically, I just kind of didn't even think I had to think about my future because I was like, whatever, it's all gonna work out.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you say that because I think that there is a consensus amongst people our age. Because when did you graduate high school?
2014.
2014. Okay, so yeah, a year before we did. And I think that amongst people between the ages of, I'd say 21 and 30 right now, there is this groupthink that we all had during that time where it was like, already shit is so crazy that I don't, I'm not too sure how far we're going to let this thing run. You know, like I don't know how far this story is actually going to go. And because because I remember like, especially being in college, I was 2016. So I was in the first semester of my sophomore year of college when the Trump's first election was going on and he would eventually get elected. And I remember watching it happen, and I didn't know shit about politics. I still don't. But, you know, back then, back then I was just like, well, there's no way, right? Like, I don't know a lot, but what I know is the corrupt politician always wins. There's no way that the host of fucking The Apprentice, you know, this literally WWF Hall of Famer is going to get in the White House. Like, there's no way. But then he won. Like, we're just not even writing the script anymore. We're just like, did you ever watch that? Did you watch South Park?
Just a tiny bit.
So there's this South Park where they are just shitting on Family Guy for the whole episode.
Oh yeah, yep.
Where they get the manatees to put the balls in the chutes, and that's how you write the script.
For sure.
And that's what I thought about. Like, how the fuck is this happening? And I feel like a lot of people our age, because it's funny, like talking to the people that I went to high school with now that were those kind of like the it kids. You know, that were like, oh, I know what I'm going to be. I'm going to be a doctor. I'm going to be a lawyer. I'm going to go in the military. I'm going to, and they had all these plans and they may or may not have done all that, right? So I know a few that did. But even the ones that did execute whatever they thought about doing in high school, they're just like, today, like, well, you know, my parents kind of just said, hey, you should do that. Like, really sternly said, hey, you should do that. And they went and did it. And they're kind of just riding this wave that their parents had set for them, regardless of whether or not they actually enjoy it. And it's just it's reassuring to know that like all of us were collectively lost. Yeah. You know what I mean?
For sure.
I just don't think that's something that's really talked about too much. And especially with social media, like because we obviously grew up when the major apps like Facebook and Instagram were really taking off. So we like during our formative years just starting to compare ourselves to this unrealistic fucking nonsense that everyone else in their late 20s, 30s, and 40s were already doing. And it's like, oh yeah, well, I should be doing that by now. I was like, no, probably not.
Yeah. And I feel like our generation has kind of had to like learn a new bullshit meter like when it comes to social media.
Oh yeah.
Because I think we're actually pretty good as human, like physical interacting beings. I think we're like okay at calling bullshit in a physical space to some extent, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of physical cues. Yeah. I mean, obviously there's people who are really good at bullshitting.
Yeah. No, there are professional liars. They're called politicians.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But I think there was a weird like learning curve almost in sort of the social media explosion that like, you know, and we've all seen it on Facebook. It's like our boomer parents and stuff like not exactly having the same automatic bullshit compass a lot of the time.
Yeah.
But then us maybe having it in other areas that we'd like to not look at.
Well, what's funny is, you know, ever since I kind of listened to podcasts here and there before I started doing this, right? I was like every other guy in his late teens into 20s. I listened to fucking Joe Rogan and maybe like one other podcast, right? So I kind of had an idea of what long form conversation was, and back then I certainly didn't speak to anyone for longer than an hour that wasn't like my closest friends, because why would I? You know, But in doing this, what I found for sure, and I find it out more and more as I carry on, is I'd say by and large, I've been thankful for every episode that I've done, but what I've noticed is this can start in the very beginning. It can be like sprinkled out throughout the conversation, whatever. But generally speaking, in a one sit down conversation, people have about, if they go into it with this intention, right? They have 20 to 30 minutes of bullshit in them.
Yeah.
At most.
Absolutely.
At most. You've got like 20 to 30 minutes of nonsense, right? Where you have this, not nonsense, but it's like these like pre-recorded answers that you give, right? It's like when you go to work in the morning, it's like, oh, how's it going, Jim? I'm fine. How are you? It's like, no, but, and like you could have gone through the most traumatic experience the night before. It's like, I'm fine, because you're not going to give the real answer. So I feel like most people have a good 20 to 30 minutes of bullshit. And then, but what I think is funny, because I've watched it happen in person. I've watched it happen in other podcasts where if it's like who can run out of the bullshit meter first?
Yeah.
If there is one, you know what I mean?
For sure.
Because I definitely had my bullshit meter for the first like 6 months to a year of doing this, right? And then I'd like find myself when I had these like these pre-saved answers, or I just had these like preconceived notions, when they'd run, I'd like scramble, like fuck. And then once I came over that, and I have to just force myself to like just say what's on my mind and not like filter it, or not like distill it. Like what's that fucking thing when Michael Scott says, like, well, sometimes I'll start a sentence, I don't even know where it's going. That's kind of find it along the way.
Right, yeah.
Like, I find myself doing that a lot.
Improvisation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then I'll see other people do that, like right in front of me, and it's like, oh shit, okay, so you just ran out of your bullshit. This is when the fun starts.
Yeah.
And I think you're right about social media well, especially now, with like, because AI is just taking over, and like the deep fakes and all that shit.
Man.
Like, I think I can go one of two ways, and the way that I hope it's going is it's just such a like, how do you like what's it called, like when you go to a carnival and they draw the picture of you and they give you like the big head, a caricature. Thank you. Where AI will just be a caricature of who they're trying to whoever they're trying to impersonate. But then even like the real person, like the Kardashians or the fucking, or like Kamala Harris, they say such fucking nonsense anyway. It's like, okay, well, that's silly, that's bullshit, but now we can juxtapose it with the AI nonsense. You know what I mean? I don't know.
Excuse me. Yeah.
It's we live in we grew up in a very strange time, but what I will say is what I love about speaking to people like you that do like a big part of your life is entertainment, is post-COVID, it really forced people to, like, I think it forced the thought into most people's mind. I'd say 95% of people force it in their mind, like, you have to do something with your life.
Yeah.
This is how easy things can crumble. So if we can fucking have society crumble over a respiratory disease and a lack of toilet paper, if we ever come back from this shit, do something cool.
Yeah.
Do something cool with your life. And I think, and I'd love to hear your opinion, because you've obviously been doing music in Albuquerque before COVID. But what I'm finding now is like, there's drama and there's bullshit. There's people who can't work with each other and all that. But generally speaking, entertainment in Albuquerque is exploding.
Absolutely.
Which is awesome to see. So like with you doing music, pre-COVID, so I want to kind of go back. I really want to go back to that conversation you had with your dad when he first started talking to you about like, hey, maybe you shouldn't really do a whole lot of this. Did that kind of like motivate you in a way? Or was that like, did you actually take that into consideration? Like, maybe I shouldn't.
I took it into consideration because there was times that I was in school that I just hated being in school, and I would consider like, should I not do this? Like, should I actually try to? Because definitely my favorite thing to do is write and perform music, and because of that, like, there was a big part of me that considered, dropping out and pursuing music in some capacity. And at the time too, also because of just kind of the feeling of the scene around here. I didn't think I would probably be able to do that here, which was honestly another problem for me because yeah, like to some extent, like I oscillate between being pretty introverted and a homebody and pretty extroverted and wanting to be where the action's at. And I've always felt pretty like split 50-50 down that line of introversion, extroversion, and wanted to figure that stuff out. Yeah, and so I think, there was definitely a real struggle inside of me for a little bit of being like, I think I would like doing this, but I also know there's a lot of things about stuff my dad is saying that I get. And I think in retrospect, I'm definitely glad I graduated and got my degree and stuff. And oh man, there's like a lot of mental well-being that comes from having like a pretty stable job. That I can see that in an alternate reality. If I had pursued music, I might have gone through a darker time than I honestly have in different ways. But I also might have, done that and something else that I really enjoyed or something. I don't really want to dwell on the what ifs or whatever, but
well, it's fun. It can be fun too, depending on what the what if is.
Right.
But because I agree, like there's what I remind myself is like, yeah, I don't know what, because I recognize that for me personally, like I'm very interested in film and screenwriting myself, and I recognize that I can't, at least for now anyway, and realistically speaking, entertainment wise, I can't just do a podcast. Like I have to do something plus this because this adds to it. This is an additive to you know what I mean. And then I look at my personal situation. I was like, well, yeah, if I I technically do get paid to do this, but it's fucking peanuts. That's not to say thank you for sponsoring me, because thank you very much. Thanks. But you know what I mean? Like, it's not going to pay my rent.
Yeah, you can't quit your day job.
Yeah, no, it's not going to pay my rent. It'll barely pay my cell phone bill.
Yeah.
But, that's all the more motivation to keep that day job and do what you're doing. So, like, do you know the comedian Bill Burr? Do you know him?
Yeah. Yep.
So he had a really good quote out of one of his podcasts that he did, and they actually used it for a promo for Rogan's new comedy club. And he was like, yeah, I could, doing the shitty day job, whether you like it or not, but like, doing the shitty day job was easy for me because I could turn around and go do my kick-ass night job that I knew eventually may or may not turn out to something cool.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And so what I've heard is that pre-COVID, because I was never someone that like went out and did things. I just hung out with my buddies or stayed in by myself and just played video games and whatever. Like, I'm not that I'm fucking well off now, because I'm not, but like, especially back before COVID, I just remember my financial situation being like, yo, it is so much cheaper to stay home at this little 500 square foot apartment and get drunk with my homies than it is to go and drink and spend all this stupid amount of money on a very little amount of alcohol, and just to go get drunk in public and make an idiot out of yourself.
Right.
So I never really went out too much. But what I've heard from people doing this podcast is the music, entertainment scene industry here wasn't all that welcoming. It wasn't all that popular or big. Like, people weren't going out as much as they are now. Did you find that to be the case whenever when you were starting to do your start going out and actually playing shows and stuff like that?
Yeah. Yeah, I think I found that to be the case for me. I think it was like more venues, and I think, again, to preface this to some extent, it's all kind of anecdotal, but I have heard this from other people that it sounds like a similar situation, but I'm sure there were certain scenes that probably didn't necessarily feel that way, because I did always kind of get the impression that pre-COVID there was a bit more of an active like metal scene here specifically. That's kind of always been in the water.
Yeah,
to some extent.
that'll always be here. And
Yeah.
I don't think this is a racist thing to say, but Native Americans love heavy metal.
Sure.
And we have a giant Native American and white populace here in Albuquerque.
Mm-hmm.
And so like if you go to the fucking shows at Isleta, like that's all I go see at Isleta.
Yeah.
Like I don't go to the fucking country concerts. I go to the metal shows.
Yeah.
And that's the only people that are there
Sure.
are the bunch of white people, a bunch of Native Americans, and they got some Mexicans like populated in there somewhere.
Yeah.
But that's where the metal people, like the big shows, they all love coming through here.
Yeah.
Because they know they
Right.
sell out. And then I gotta agree with you, like pre-COVID, I would really only see flyers for metal shows. Mm-hmm. These little underground shows going on at like, I don't even think they did stuff at Sister. It was like more at El Rey and Launchpad.
Yeah. Like I know they still did stuff at Sister pre-COVID, but it was a lot more sparse. It seems like they've picked up the amount of stuff they do
For sure.
considerably.
They have a show like every weekend.
Yeah.
It looks like.
And just honestly, just like everywhere else, it seems like I keep telling people there is a good show to see every single weekend here.
Mm-hmm. There is.
Like a good local show at the and probably stuff coming through. But yeah, like to me, coming back into it afterwards, after the pandemic, definitely felt like a marked difference, and like more people were active and also just more collaborative, and reaching out to other spaces and other artists and stuff more. And again, that's been my experience, but I've been loving it. So, yeah.
Well, you're not alone, dude. Like,
Right.
Well, I mean, inherently, because of how like collaborative everyone has been. But I've noticed that because like for instance, Leroy, who does the lead vocal or one of the lead vocals for the Slums of Harvard, right? He'll play shows with the Mango Cakes. And I think someone from them will play with the fucking Rhythms.
Yeah.
And then and then obviously you do your band, but you also got on stage with LaMelo. And then it's funny, like I'll look through my like my calendar of past people that I've had scheduled and the ones that I have coming up. And I could like, you ever see like that meme with Charlie from fucking It's Always Sunny where he's connecting all the red string, all the yarn. He's like, yeah. I'm like, yeah, they've played with them and they went with, and then I'm like, what the fuck is, but it's so cool. And it's so cool to see that.
And the pool of musicians, I think now is big enough that I think that's another thing of like pre-COVID, it was just, like every show that wasn't just metal was like a completely random hodgepodge of things. As opposed to now, I think people have been like coordinating kind of like vibes to some extent with like a lot of shows. And I think it's great to also have shows every once in a while that is just a random hodgepodge of different shit. But like the pool just seems so much bigger now.
Well, and I think right now, because of how, at least in my opinion, it looks like everyone's a lot more welcoming to not only working together, but the crowd itself, people after getting locked in for a year and a half to 2 years, they are just dying to go out and do shit.
Yeah.
And especially in Albuquerque with like, everyone who lives here, we know how fucking poor, we know how poor we all are. We know how violent it is here. We know what the government is doing, whether you're right, left, in the middle, we all know the shitty parts of this place.
And we still love it here.
But for whatever reason, a lot of people don't leave. And it's like, well, if I'm stuck here, I want to do cool shit.
Yeah.
And people are dying to go out and see great shows. And that's what I was telling Wyatt from Homebody.
Yeah.
I was like, y'all's show, what I loved about it the most is one of the things, the number one thing that I love about a good album is the track listing in a great album flows great to where you don't even think you're listening to an album. You listen to one 30, 40 hour long song.
Yeah.
And that's what y'all show sounded like between you guys, Side Montero and Homebody. It was all flowing together extremely well. And, like I said before we started the podcast, the guys over at Side Montero are fucking great.
Oh, yeah.
Real good guys. And it was so cool to see all three of y'all's groups bring people in. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Like don't get me wrong, like there were people that I'd say like 60% of the crowd stayed for all three. Mm-hmm. But what I thought was cool is there were patches of people that only came, to see LaMelo, only came to see Cy Montero, only came to see Homebody. Mm-hmm. And I think that's awesome that even like local bands that don't have like a giant fucking following, they're still able to bring in a crowd of 20 or 30 people. Right. Like that's something. Like,
right.
I don't know, along with a lot of other musicians here in Albuquerque, I don't think that's given a lot of credit. Where it's like, to even get one person to come out and see you, that means they had to fucking make plans, get a date, or get their friends, right? If they have a kid, you got to get a babysitter or lock it in the closet for a few hours. And then you got to get in your car and go. And, it's a lot to motivate people to go out and do things.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's cool to see the music scene here is able to do that. But speaking about how collaborative people are, what has not like your experience, but like how does it feel to like slowly, but I know how it is for myself, but like, how is it for you to be slowly ingrained in this ecosystem of music that's going on?
Yeah. I mean, I just love to see it. I like to just see people figuring out ways to just bring new creative things into communal spaces. Like we need a variety of voices in, any broad cultural context to just like bring interest into the public space. Because I think that's something that, Albuquerque, I'm going to bring this into city planning. Albuquerque's downtown has always been like a strange space, at least ever since we've been around.
Yeah.
Because there's evidences and stuff in some of the architecture and things of some of the buildings. It's like, okay, like there used to be stuff here.
Yeah.
And at least since I've been downtown, there's stuff there, but there's been a lot of transience in businesses not being able to stay open, and foot traffic seeming weirdly sparse when you compare it to visiting like any other city of comparable size around the U.S. And I really think like urban spaces are like that, especially for people visiting a new city. They like experience a downtown as like, oh, this should be like representative of the city.
Yeah, no, it should be. Like, I don't think that's arguable. Like, your downtown should be like the best you have to offer.
And in a lot of ways, like Albuquerque's downtown is just it's completely unlike any other downtown I've been in. It's just most of the time. But when it has those pockets of when it's stuff is happening, it's like the coolest fucking place.
Yeah.
And just so any energy that can get pumped into just being excited about our city and being in a physical space together, representing like the unity and excitement about whatever is happening in our city is just great. So the larger the pool, the better it is. The more people downtown on all the art walks and all the any other events that are happening down there is awesome.
Well, I was gonna say like the most crowded or the most like energetic that I've seen it be is during the art walks.
Yeah,
and those, I'm not gonna say it single-handedly saved the entertainment scene here, but it definitely like it was probably the biggest ray of hope that it could have gotten, because it simultaneously Okay, so first of all, it obviously brought people downtown. Shockingly, I'll be honest. Because I heard about it for the first time and I was like, okay, great. So the idea of it is awesome, but where's it gonna be? Are you sure?
Yeah.
Like, are there's nowhere in the Heights, huh? Okay,
right.
So so it's like, okay, we're gonna do that. All right, great. But I went to it a couple of times because I've had a few friends that had booths down there.
Yeah,
and I couldn't believe what I was looking at. I really couldn't, because simultaneously, like, obviously it brought people down to downtown, but it gave hope and exposure to a lot of local businesses that set up shop. And then obviously, okay, see a couple of booths, boom, pop into Sisters. See a couple of booths, boom, you go to Launchpad, you go to wherever it is. And I think that is such a great idea. And I wish that there were, like, I'm not saying, and I don't think you should, like, I'm not saying you should be doing an art walk every fucking weekend, but I really do think there should be ideas or just something going on, because I think it's like to bring people like down more, because like you're right. I think, in my opinion, what I think happens is on the weekends, people start showing up between 9 and 10, give or take. But for good reason. They don't walk around or hang out outside. Yeah. They pick a bar, they pick a venue, and stay there until 1 a.m. And then like 1 to 1:30 is when everyone's getting like pushed out of the bars, and they all flood out, they trample over each other, and go about their way.
Which I think is actually another interesting thing about like, Albuquerque's downtown as maybe compared to some other places post-COVID. Because I listened to your conversation with Wyatt, and he was talking about Portland and how stuff closes really early and stuff. And here, stuff still kind of closes comparatively early pre-COVID, but it's still, it's like around midnight 1, whatever.
Yeah.
But it doesn't feel like dead or like anything's hindered either.
Oh, I disagree.
Because pretty much.
No, keep going.
Yeah, because like pretty much everything's still open, at least downtown, until around those times and stuff. Yeah. But that's been something that a lot of places have struggled with for sure. And I'm sure a lot of people, even in town, might be like, I'm still upset that XYZ business isn't open later. Well,
me,
Walmart,
me.
Yeah,
that is me.
Yeah. But yeah, I think it's interesting that like Albuquerque's downtown life has not necessarily felt super hindered by that for some reason.
Well, it's weird because I guess in the broader sense, it really hasn't, because bars pre-COVID closed around 2. Now they close at 1. So you're losing an hour, but like in the grand scheme of things, you're right. We're not closing at 10.
Yeah.
But, I really do think that if the crime wasn't as bad here as it was, we would have businesses on a weekday that would stay open till 10.
Yeah.
Now, granted, I'm not sure how much the employment issue affects it. You know what I mean? Like, because I know that everyone is hurting for people.
Yeah.
I know that everyone is really trying to hire, and like I used to work in the caregiving field post COVID, and thank God I got out of there, because fuck, that shit sucked.
That's hard.
And I wasn't even a caregiver. I was fucking management.
Sure.
And I was still just like, whoa,
for sure.
no, thank you. But I remember how hard it was for us to keep things staffed. And I was talking to a friend of mine that still works, and they were telling me that a new regulation from the state was you need to have 3 people on a shift at all times. And that is, at least back when I was working there, it was a godsend if you had 2 for one shift a day.
Yeah.
So I don't know how much of the early closures is affected by, the lack of employment.
Yeah.
But
and I'm sure a lot, honestly.
But I know for a fact when it comes to nightlife, a big factor of it is crime.
Yeah.
Because who was telling me this? I think it was Erin, this lady that I had that came on the pod like a year ago. I think she was telling me that when they first signed a deal, the city like did this deal with APD where like they section everything off on Thursday, Friday, and Saturdays.
Yeah.
I think Sundays too.
Okay.
But they would just section everything off downtown.
Right.
Whoever works that beat, they get paid more. So I'm sure there's like budgetary issues and shit like that.
Yeah.
But I'm not saying that Albuquerque's got to stay open till fucking 3, 4 in the morning.
Sure.
But I don't know. I think with the explosion of entertainment and the need for it and the want for it, that business owners and entertainers would be open to staying out a little bit later. They make a little more money. People have a little bit more fun.
Yeah.
And I think it all becomes cyclical after a while.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I still just know, just like talking to people who are just, like not either not young or like don't kind of live downtown or just like aren't into any kind of like music entertainment culture scene or whatever. Yeah, like there's some people who I'll be like, oh yeah, you're like playing a show, like when, where is it? And I'll be like, it's downtown or whatever. And they're like, ooh, downtown. Ooh, like, I don't know about that. And yeah, and it's just, it's interesting. Cause I think, like, I don't know. There's so many problems that I don't know how to solve, but, I'm in it for the ride. I'm in it for Albuquerque. We're going to figure it out. Maybe eventually, if we don't, I'm still here.
Well, I think we will eventually. I think like what's cool about, at least like, again, because I come at this from the point of view of, I don't know the entertainment industry. I'm learning it. I'm learning the people. I'm learning like everything from like the mainstay like entertainers, the people who run the venues. Like I'm learning all of that, meeting all these people, and it's cool. It's cool. But intentionally, this is very intentional, I stay out of the inner workings.
Yeah.
You know, I'm just a dude with the microphone who likes to talk to people and ask questions. That's all I am.
Yeah.
And but what's, from my point of view, it's really cool to see now because Albuquerque has a ton of voids, right? We've got, and they're slowly but surely getting filled, but we don't have like the rock band, the main singer that came out of Albuquerque. We don't have the comedian. We don't have the film.
Yeah.
But
you know what's interesting? I think about this a lot. As far as music goes, it's like there's the Shins. It's like the Shins is like the band that like came out of Albuquerque. But that's like the love-hate relationship I think some people have with James Mercer specifically, of just being like, he should acknowledge Albuquerque more and stuff, which I don't really have any opinion on that. I've heard some people talk about that, and I just don't know enough to...
A lot of motherfuckers have opinions about that.
Yeah. But what I do think is wild is literally Bezos and Gates like spent significant amounts of time here, developing ideas for what became their businesses, and they have never like seemingly mentioned Albuquerque in any positive light.
Well, and that's, so it's a two-way street. It's a mixture of, I think I know where you're going with this.
Yeah.
Because it's a two-way street. They don't recognize it because they look at New Mexico and they're like, oh, dead last in fucking education, bottom 5 in child mortality, bottom 5 in homicide, bottom 5 in violent crime. If we get asked about it, we're not going to say no. We're not going to say yes.
For sure.
Right? But then on the other hand, with the way that Albuquerque is, when you talk to people about famous people that came out of New Mexico or famous people that came out of Albuquerque, they're not going to say Bates or Bezos or Gates or Jesus Christ, Bill Gates or Jeff Bezos.
Yeah.
Because who out of Albuquerque right now can relate to those people?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh, for sure.
Like, we can't even begin to relate to them because they are like literally like the richest.
And I don't think either of them were like born or raised here. They just spent a few years here or something. But
well, actually, Springer, can you look that up? Because
I don't know. I could be wrong.
I heard somewhere that Bezos was born here.
Sure.
I heard that somewhere. That he was actually born here, left for a little bit, came back, did Amazon, left again, and then kind of did the flip-flop kind of thing.
Yeah.
But, yeah, like, who can relate to them? I think that's a big,
that's
big
fair.
part of it. He was born here, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, born here.
And I think to steel man some of that, if I had as much money and influence and stuff as they do, I don't know whether I'd be thinking about anywhere I used to live whatsoever.
Wait.
But who knows?
What is his last name? His last name is Jorgensen. He was like, all right, listen. All right, we might have to get famous off this whole...
You fucking nerd.
This whole book selling deal isn't really going to take off under Jorgensen. Jorgensen doesn't get laid. Yeah. All right, Jorgensen gets a kiss goodnight on the cheek. He does not get his dick sucked. We got to be Bezos.
Bezos, baby.
I am Jeff Bezos with a capital B.
Bezos for bitches.
Yep. But I don't know.
But yeah, just nobody can really relate to those people.
Yeah. No, I get that. For sure.
But and maybe this is one of the only parts of me that really is like, wishful thinking. But in the next 5 years, we might have, the band that came out of Albuquerque and made it big. The comedian that's put out fucking 2 going on 3 Netflix specials, done all this stuff. Because I look around and I see the potential and I see the talent. But what I think and I'd love to hear your opinion on this because you kind of mentioned it a little earlier. One of the biggest thing dragging Albuquerque down outside of like the economic system or the crime or that is the mindset. Because it's a community, it's a tight-knit community. Everybody knows everybody. Everyone supports each other for the most part and does all that. But then it's also, whether it's people our age or even like people older than us. Lord forbid that you come into money, you have an opportunity, you get successful, and then what happens? And what sucks, this is a truth a lot of people don't want to fucking swallow. It'll be anybody. It'll be your friends. It'll be your closest friends. It'll be your fucking family. It'll be your partner, boyfriend or girlfriend. And they'll be like, oh, what? You got money now?
Yeah.
Oh, what? You got a better job now? Oh, well, you think you're better than me because you're getting out of Albuquerque? You think you're better?
Yeah.
Because people want you to succeed, like generally, right? And it's sad because I've seen this and I've experienced it myself. People want you to succeed, but they don't want you to be better than they are.
Yeah.
Because now they are what? Lower or worse than you?
Sure.
Which is not true. Like, obviously, you can measure money by numbers.
Yeah.
But as far as, like, success in life, like, that's, A, it's a real shitty way to view life. But B, that's, like, almost, I don't want to say ingrained in the Hispanic culture, but it's there.
Yeah. And I mean, yeah, I think there's a lot of moving pieces to that for sure. I think, and I think to some extent there's just kind of like a jadedness of people seeing people succeed and then having their success be like just a gateway out of New Mexico.
Yeah.
And just like not using that success to kind of better things here. But then other people who have been successful here getting, screwed over by just various factors here, be it people who are taking advantage of them here and other things. And so it's just, there's a lot of pieces to that. I think, a big part of, I think there's so many ideas and like different seemingly unrelated factors I think about when I think about like what are things that have historically like prevented Albuquerque from like being more of like a financial hub and having less crime and less homelessness and any of this stuff. Like, what are factors causing that? And I think there's just so many, and a lot of them are not like obvious correlates.
Well, what stands out to you?
I think a lot of things with just New Mexico in general is it's very difficult to establish any kind of manufacturing here because our access to water is so incredibly limited. Because basically when a lot of water rights stuff was kind of getting hashed out between the states in this area.
For those of you listening on Spotify, turns out that John Denver was born in Roswell.
Nice.
That's fucking... Okay, can you even...
That's kind of wild.
Can you even try to pronounce his last name? Can the viewers on YouTube see the fucking thing? Because...
I really want it to be Dushendorf. I don't know.
Yeah, no, fuck that guy. Because isn't that dude? No, because isn't that the dude that went and sang "Country Roads Take Me"? Yeah.
Well,
so he's talking about
Rocky Mountain High.
Yeah, he's talking about West Virginia, but you're from fucking Roswell, New Mexico, bro.
Yeah.
No, that's what happened. He got abducted by the aliens. And they're like, you will never remember New Mexico. You grew up in West Virginia.
Oh man, that's great.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. I was just like trying to look up music artists from New Mexico.
Sure.
See who popped up, and like obviously you have Al Hurricane and everything like that.
Dude, yeah. Oh, yeah, Al Hurricane.
Yo, I was listening to a podcast from New Mexico. I'm not gonna say who it was. I'm not gonna say who the guest was, but the host they brought up, like, because one of the hosts is like a second or third nephew or whatever to Al Hurricane, and they asked the guest. They were like, "Oh yeah, so you know who Al Hurricane is, right?" And this chick goes, "Yeah, the weatherman."
Oh, no. Oh.
And I was like, no, you're
gonna get eviscerated.
But no,
Oh, that's
it's
funny.
no. So okay, so you're saying about it's hard to get manufacturing and due to our access to water, because
So-
we've been in like a perpetual fucking drought for over a decade, right?
And so, okay, here's the thing. So, like, the Rio Grande has something like insane. Like it's like 1/10 of the water that runs through the Colorado River. And then Texas, I think they also have Texas. Actually, I think I could be wrong about this, but I think they actually get more water from the Rio Grande than we do.
It comes off the Pecos River.
What's that?
It comes off of the Pecos River.
Oh, okay, the Pecos River. Okay.
You throw your mic on, they'll hear you. He's okay. So he is one of the most requested guests to come back on the podcast, and he doesn't believe me for some reason. See that look on his face. For some reason, he don't believe me.
Dude, it's always like guys behind the scenes. People always just want to know more because they're like, "What's going on with this mysterious?"
No, with him, he got way too drunk a couple times, and they're like, "Hey,
nice.
He's a great storyteller. Bring him back." But so anyway, all right, so look that up because I'd like to know that because
I think you're right.
That's interesting because either way, because the Pecos River is still predominantly in New Mexico, right? Or am I wrong about that? Or am I stupid? I don't know geography.
So.
He's looking it up, folks. Anyway,
essentially, even with that being said, just New Mexico has just very little water in it in general. Arizona gets a lot from the Colorado River, which has like 10 times the amount as the Rio Grande, and so Phoenix, at least for now, has more access to water. They had a lot of manufacturing move in there, especially also because real estate was dirt cheap, especially like right around the time air conditioning was a thing, because otherwise no one could possibly live in Phoenix. And so, I guess natural resource wise, there were like a few things that just kind of contributed to Texas and Arizona having a little bit better sort of access to just getting things started.
You could build a small town and eventually a society around all of that.
Yeah. And so
because no one's going to settle down in a barren wasteland.
Yeah. Because and regardless of even how it happened, you can just look at any of our states and just be like, like New Mexico has almost no manufacturing compared to these two other states, and it's neither here nor there.
Well, it's sad, man, because I sat down with Jay Block, real smart guy. Mm-hmm. He was running for governor in this last election. I sat down with him for a podcast right before the election, and we were talking about the priorities of the government, specifically when it came to bringing jobs in New Mexico.
Yeah,
and obviously, like, because I told him this straight up. Like, I don't think I told him this on camera, but. So what is this? Okay, so the Pecos River originates in north central New Mexico and flows into Texas, emptying into the Rio Grande. But where does it predominantly give water to? Is it into Texas?
It just drops that water off into the Rio Grande, and then there's a pact that started in 1938 that I was able to find, where basically between Colorado, Texas, and New Mexico, it was just a distribution of water from the Rio Grande itself, and then the Colorado River feeds.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. What was I saying? Oh, yeah. So obviously, because I told him this off camera, I was like, I after our conversation, I find it hard to I enjoy talking to him.
Yeah,
but I find it very tough to trust politicians inherently.
Sure.
I find it very hard to. But obviously, he had put a Republican spin because inherently he's biased to that party. That's what he was running under. But they were talking. He was talking about the priorities of Grisham specifically when it came to bringing in jobs.
Okay.
And apparently, at the height of legalizing marijuana at the state level, the Roundhouse, and obviously this is very much like generalizing and shit, 'cause they've got like 20 to 50 different things they're working on a regular basis.
Yeah.
But like I said, at the time, the top two things in the Roundhouse were the legalization of marijuana or bidding to Intel, and we were in direct competition with Phoenix. Was it Phoenix or Tucson? On who should get the next Intel plant. And the bidding happened. We didn't get it, and it went to Arizona. Well, then I guess there was some fucking like Southwest governor convention or whatever. This fucking circle jerk they all came to, and took care of business and went home. Eyes wide shut, peanut butter everywhere. You know what I mean? Some dogs got involved. No, but they so you can't take this shit.
Do you have anybody who animates any clips from your video?
No, I am not that rich yet.
Good.
I might be bored enough.
Oh no! What have I done?
But that's funny. But good. That's funny. But I guess they had this fucking meeting over a weekend or something, and he had gotten invited.
Yeah.
And because he had been up, he's not city council. He was something big in the Rio Rancho government. And and then he had put in his bid for governor, gotten some traction, got invited. So he goes and he had a conversation with the current, I don't know if it's the same governor, but at the time, the governor of Arizona.
Yeah.
And he was, and that conversation brought up. And the long story short of it, and I'm all for the legalization of marijuana on the fucking federal level. I'm all for that. I'm also all for recognizing priorities. And so I guess when they were having the conversation about the Intel stuff, the governor of Arizona, long story short, he was very candid. He was like, you guys weren't even in question. Like, yeah, it was technically between us two. But right when Intel found out what y'all's priorities were, and honestly, our tax breaks were a little bit better for them coming in.
Oh yeah, that's definitely another thing.
They fucking chose us because.
Yep.
But then I guess another part of talking about communication and working together. I guess our government was less willing to play ball with this multi-billion-dollar corporation than Arizona was. And look, I don't know shit about government. I don't know anything about being a politician. I have no desire to do that. I'm not in that. It's always like this a sick fantasy of like, well, if I became president,
what would I do?
Yeah, what would I do? But like, if I was in charge of a city, if I was in charge, if I was the mayor of Albuquerque, and I had the opportunity, like, let's scale it down a little bit. If I had the opportunity, because those Intel plants bring like 10, 13,000 jobs, something absolutely stupid. If I had the ability to bring in 5,000, 3,000 jobs off of one installation, I'd be fighting fucking tooth and nail. Especially if I was the mayor of Albuquerque.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the thing is like that's the best case scenario.
Can you look up how many jobs one Intel plant brings in?
No.
I mean, Intel brought in $3.5 billion in microchip future.
Okay, so he brought up this article. So Intel $3.5 billion investment in Mexico facility is critical to microchip future. Okay, so that, I believe, was the proposed one that never happened. I think.
It says they was joined by MLG. Because this is talking about the Rio Rancho plant.
Okay, we go back up to that. So Intel executives were joined by Grisham and other politicians at the plant of Albuquerque. Okay, so it is the one. Okay. So Rio Rancho is to share details of Intel's global strategy as it looks to reclaim the top spot in the semiconductor sector. So that is the building off that they did for the existing Intel plant. But imagine two of those.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like literally, you're able to double your GDP in a state by just convincing someone better than somebody else.
But see, then again, like that's kind of the problem. Is like that would be awesome if like we had enough water, but like those plants use so much water, and that's the thing. Is like, and I definitely don't know the specifics of it, but if there was just better planning that went into states figuring out what water was going where. Yeah.
So Ento Corporation, headquartered in Santa Clara, California. So this is their headquarters. So you might want to scale it down a little bit for a plant in New Mexico, but their headquarters uses 9 billion gallons of water a year to manufacture microchips. But also runs global operations.
And so,
but still, like, so what? 9 billion from them, even if it's 1 billion gallons for us. What the fuck?
It's a lot of water.
yeah. So you see the problem. Like, it would be really nice if New Mexico had more water to actually bring more manufacturing in.
So how do we get more? Like, is there an idea
So-
in your head? Is there a solution?
There's like a very wild proposal that I don't think there's any way it's going to happen, because it would be like probably the most expensive infrastructure project like in American history. and the federal government's not going to use that on making sure New Mexico can open a few more things. But like, I actually have heard like there was a proposal at one point to have like a basically like a pipeline aqueducty thing from the delta of the Mississippi, like in Louisiana, across Texas into New Mexico. That was literally something that like somebody thought of and sort of like drew up at one point, but it's
Holy
just like
shit.
it would be so insanely expensive for like such little payoff for the federal, like, and that's the thing, is like the federal government would have to pay for it, obviously, because it passed through like 3 states.
So would that be from like, I'm so uneducated when it comes to this shit. Would that be like from, let's say, the heart of the Mississippi River? Or is that from like, let's say Mississippi River, the main portion's right here and it stretches all the way down and we can end it here so we can start draining here?
From what I understand, it was somewhere in Louisiana, which is close to where, like the delta into the Gulf of Mexico is.
Okay.
But yeah, like the logistics that would go into that are just insane for so little comparative payoff for the country.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, I mean, it's definitely on every Southwest state's mind, like, for the next 50 years, is like, what are we going to do about water? And New Mexico honestly has the worst hand.
Yeah. We're
in
dead
the
center.
whole thing. So I think, to me, that's one of the biggest unsung heroes of like why our economy is like, it has just never been able to take off like our neighbors, is we just like, we haven't had that access. And there's definitely other things, but I think that's one that I don't know that enough people talk about a lot. And it's sort of discouraging, because it kind of seems like a problem that's like, I have literally no idea how you'd remedy that.
Yeah.
But maybe if New Mexico figures out a way to capitalize on non-physical products, i.e. entertainment.
Yeah.
then
So
maybe
is
we'll
that
be okay.
so is that kind of the same argument as to why can't we just start, because obviously California's in a fucking drought and they're right next to
and
the
a lot
ocean.
of other things. Yeah.
and they're right next to the ocean.
Yeah,
So like
then they've been doing stuff with desalinization. Is that how you say it? I don't know. The non-saltifying.
Yeah.
And for a long time, I don't know. And I'm sure there's still weird trade-offs with it, but for a long time it was like, it was something that introduced like a crazy amount of brine back into the ocean, which was bad for it. But I think recently they've like figured out some other kind of way that's like has less environmental impact, but it's also more expensive to invest in.
Yeah.
But yeah, like they're definitely struggling too, because they're like a massive percentage of agriculture for like agriculture exports for the world. Yeah, let's look it up. Yeah, because that's the thing. I might be talking out of my ass half the time, and I
all we do
love
here.
having a fact checker available.
That's all we do here is talk out of our ass.
I love
dude.
it.
California is responsible for something like 40% of the, or like.
Oh, I wouldn't be able to put out a percentage, but I know like in the U.S., like they compared to other states in the U.S., they export a lot. And it maybe at least to just the rest of the U.S. or something.
And you know what I think about too is
Okay, yeah.
when we're talking about
Which
word.
is crazy because like like I think most of like kind of the Midwest-ish like is just climate wise much better suited for that, but just because of like the big boom into California. And there's definitely a lot of arable land in California, but again, it's the water issue.
Right.
And yeah, so I don't know.
Well, I think about too, like why can't bills get passed that help these things or that help like not like completely solve these issues, but at least mitigate some of them. And I would imagine a lot of it is because of the politics of it.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
It's like, like, even if they created the bill where it's like, this bill is going to solve 50% of New Mexico's water problems, or it's going to make it's going to make taking all of these resources out of California easier and cheaper. But our politicians have such a knack for attaching a bunch of bullshit onto these bills, where it's like, we are going to do this environmental thing, but then we're also going to attach, because it's a hot topic right now, we're going to attach all these transgender, gender reaffirming, fucking medical bullshit. And then, so you alienate the Republicans. And then what the Democrats get to do is, you can flip this on the Republicans too. But what the Democrats get to do is they say, look at that. Your pro-eco Republicans said no to the water bill. And then that poor fucking politician's like, no, I didn't. Yeah, I said no, but I said no to the bullshit attached to it. I didn't say no to the helping thing. I said no to the shitty thing.
Right, for sure. It's
Wait, what was that you just pulled up so I can read it?
It was basically saying that California's water usage can fill 31 million football fields with 1 foot of water. For agriculture alone.
31 million football fields worth of water.
Yeah.
Oh.
But you know what's weird about that? I wonder how that converts to the fucking 9 billion gallons that Intel uses. You know what I mean? No, you know what I mean?
Like interesting.
How does that?
Well, and that ends up being the problem with using like random ass measurements like football fields instead of us. In America we use anything except a fucking metric system, baby. We use 18 million hippos worth of water.
4 quintillion 3-inch dicks of water compared to like the central metric system that everyone else uses.
Which dicks?
Okay,
man.
So in California, so 80% of the water in California goes to agriculture, and 20% of that to tree nuts.
Oh yeah, no, nuts take a lot of water, for sure.
I think for like 1 gallon of almond milk, it takes like 4 gallons of water just to make.
Yeah.
I'm gonna help Springer out really quick. I'm just gonna like take this mic and I'm gonna put it like.
All right, I'm gonna take this opportunity to go pee.
Right there, so you can speak.
I don't want to.
All right, are we back?
Yep.
Cool. Okay, so as we're taking a pee break, you were saying that California, the actual citizens, like the populace, only uses 10% of the water.
Roughly, yeah.
So then the rest of it is going straight to exporting and agriculture.
Environmental and agriculture, yeah.
Okay, so can you find how much percentage? Let's do the percentage of water that California exports out of the country, like out of the country, and then the percentage of water that the United States, if we export out of the, I'd imagine we do because we tend to be the fucking world helpers.
It's kind of a hard metric because sometimes actually literally like food and other stuff is contained as like a water use, like
like a consumable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything that used water to produce sometimes is included in like, water exports and stuff, which is probably the most useful metric, honestly, when it comes to exports.
Okay, because I'm interested in that because, and obviously this is never gonna fucking happen anytime soon because of what's going on in Ukraine.
Oh man.
But like, there's an argument because we're already kind of going that way economically as a globe. Mm-hmm. But the argument for not a complete and total isolationist policy, but at least a soft isolationist.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, there's that's definitely in the water right now for sure. As far as America figuring out how to be, at the in nice, lovely terms, self-sustainable.
Yeah.
Because we just in the past like 20 years we've discovered more oil stuff, which comes with its own baggage and it's there's a lot of that was one of the big eye openers of COVID when you're looking specifically at medical or medicinal things in general. How much of our over the counters come overseas? How much of our medical supplies specifically come from China? Like, we saw how much that impacted us when the global trade almost came to a complete freeze. Right.
During, like, the height of the pandemic, from, like, February of 2020 until, like, really a year. Like, that year of February of 2020 to February, March of 2022, when a lot of that was frozen. Like, what was it, like, that cargo ship that got stuck in the canal,
right,
or whatever, and it halted fucking supplies for like, 3 months.
The amount of money that it prevented from going into like the global economy was
like
just,
10 billion.
Right. Yeah. It was just insane for one ship to get stuck in a canal.
It was like perfect storm after perfect storm, because then it was like, okay, we're finally, and then DeSantis, one of the things that he did was like, no, fuck this. Okay, we're opening all of our ports. And we're going to bring everything in 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We're going to bring everything in and make everything go. If they can get rerouted to Florida, reroute that shit to Florida. But then it became a problem in Florida. And then I think okay, so back to water. The state of California used almost 29 million gallons of water a day, making it responsible for 9% of the nation's water use and the highest total water use. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But look at the export. Can you find that or no?
That's the closest.
It'd probably be kind of hard to find.
Okay. Well, but when they open up all those ports, and then obviously like the Democrat ran, like big D Democrat ran states saw what the Republican state was doing, and they opened up their ports, and then they ran into the issue of, well, after all these fucking lockdowns, and people either were out of a job and didn't want to go back to their job, or the people that had a job were too scared to work because of COVID, because it's still like, will it kill me? Will it not kill me? What's it going to do? If I get it, I might be okay, but what about grandma? What about my fucking, my predisposed family member, predisposed friend, whatever, that had a pre-existing condition? They don't want to go back to work, so then it became a problem of cargo ships sitting at the port waiting to get unloaded because they didn't have enough people to fucking unload the cargo. And it just became this cyclical fucking nonsense.
For sure.
That nobody could have predicted. Well,
even
if you could predict it, I bet it was a conversation they had. It was like, well, what if this happened? Man, it'll never happen.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, we don't need a fucking solution for that.
Yeah. And I think a lot of this, to me, ties to, I think recently, I've been like getting a lot more interested in just like like resource-based ideas.
Yeah.
And like seeing how our country and other countries and stuff develop based on available resources. And I honestly think that's like I wish that more people viewed like politics in some way in that lens. And obviously there's just like there's so many factors that go into that you know, like politics is such like an emotionally tied thing for most people, and you know that's just a human thing. But yeah, I feel like recently I've been getting so into like I've been trying to seek out just information about just what's stuff that different countries in our country has found or developed or got at different points, and how did that seemingly change the culture of the place or reinforce a culture that was already happening in that place.
And a basic example being?
So say any place that has discovered like a lot of oil. So it's like you have like the Middle East and stuff, you can see different countries sort of react differently to their oil resources and stuff, and Western countries react differently to their oil resources. And I think it's just a useful tool, I think, to look at different places and just be like, okay, what was the culture at the time that they discovered that thing, and how did that contribute to them using them? So it's like, say, okay, with lithium, like in South America, you have like 3 very lithium-heavy countries. Let me pull up a map and just make sure I'm getting them right. But they both had like 3 very, very distinct just kind of cultures. And they all treated the resource like very, very differently, to the benefit or detriment of sort of the well-being of the country.
Interesting.
And I just like, I don't want to misrepresent anything here. Okay, so I believe.
Well, it's interesting what we're finding. I'm not really like finding out, I guess, what the public is becoming more privy to when it comes to stuff like, the electric vehicle, you know, it's economically friendly, quote unquote, but then it does more damage wholesale. It does more damage to the earth mining the lithium and getting all those batteries together.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. It does more damage to build the batteries for a Tesla, by and large, than it is to drive your regular, you know, gasoline-powered car.
Right. Okay, we've got like a little chart up there. Okay, I think I was thinking of like Argentina, Chile, and...
Okay, so what we're looking at... Okay, so basically what we're seeing here is, with the exception of Chile, the production of lithium in the major countries like Argentina, China, and really Australia way overwhelms the reserves. So just like every other resource on this planet, we're using more than we have.
Yeah, exactly. And like, and it's just like it's just, oh man, it's so hard. Cause I think, like our sheer population right now is very difficult to reconcile.
Which is sad because it's on the downturn.
Right.
Which is scary because a lot of people think that, all this resource issue is because of there's too many people and our population is getting too high, when it's quite the opposite.
Yeah, and a lot of countries' infrastructures like need to be, at least the way they currently exist, are like based off of the idea of continuous growth. And I think that's ultimately, to me, probably the root of so many problems, is just there's too many systems on the world market that are based off of unlimited growth. and I don't necessarily want to like pin myself anywhere on a like capitalist to socialist spectrum or anything like that, because like I don't necessarily even think that's the best way to think about the divide, because I think almost all countries have a mix of both to varying degrees in different sectors, and I think that's the important thing. But almost all countries have like a very strong opinion officially against one thing or the other.
Yeah. So where did all this interest come from for you?
Oh, okay, this is going to come back to being like very personal, but my older brother he was a political science major and also has Asperger's, and is just like he is an incredibly like bright and strange individual, that I think honestly like his presence in my life, like I don't think I would be as interested in any kind of like world politics or anything if it wasn't like for him and his weird brain, like showing me stuff and being like, what do you think of this? And be like, holy shit, like that's the craziest thing I've ever heard. So yeah, a lot of it is honestly just like my older brother, and he was kind of like, growing up we butted heads so much, and he was in some way kind of the black sheep of our family a little bit, because like I kind of mentioned earlier, we were pretty religious, and he was the first one to be like, I don't know about this, guys.
The math does not check out on this one, boys.
Yeah. And we had a pretty rocky relationship until a few years ago, and there was just some kind of pretty heavy stuff that happened. Like my dad passed away in 2017, and there was a lot of stuff that, a lot of stuff that just kind of brought us close together, and I just kind of became like much more interested in his world, and and I knew I wanted to be more a part of his life, because I had just kind of I did not have the best relationship with him growing up, and I just kind of discounted him as this, oh well, he's the one who's not on Jesus' side, so he's wrong about stuff.
Well, and that's with all of those elements considered, and I'm sorry to hear that about your father. But how many examples are there, familial or not, where it's like, okay, a tragic loss or a tragic event happens, and everyone involved just becomes split and divided. Not even just down the middle, but just in their own different, walks of life, or like they get split, and then you add, not even sprinkle, you add in religion to it, where it's like, oh well, that tends to be a very, it's as unifying as it is dividing when it comes for people. It's like, all right, well, if you're not on my side and believe what I believe, well, fuck you and fuck this and all that. But no, you guys were able. What was that bridging like for you two? Like that can't be an easy thing, but I'm glad to hear that it happened.
I mean, I think a lot of it was just like my worldview just felt so tidy, like up until my dad got cancer, and it was.
Like everything's a certain way, everything works this way. We have this one world view, and then a disrupting thing happens, and it's like, hey, wait a minute.
Yeah, and ever since that point, I would just kind of like look around, and so many things that I had just kind of taken for granted about just kind of the subculture I was in, I was just like, this is completely arbitrary, isn't it? Like,
yeah.
And, and I just started to see so many things that like my brother had told me like when I was younger and stuff, that I was like, oh yeah, like you're probably right about that. There's still definitely tons of stuff we disagree on or whatever, but
what was like one of the subjects you guys came to that was like a agreement?
Oh man, lots. I think I had honestly just like well, I don't know. And I think that's the thing, is we still just meet in the middle on like a lot of things.
Right.
But I think probably the primary thing, especially over in the past couple of years, is just the idea that like we just like, there's certain things, especially with metaphysical things like religion or whatever, that it's like you can't, like, the likelihood that you found like an answer that is like so incredibly specific that only applies to like 100,000 people in all of human history or something that like believed the correct thing, and that's what you're banking like all of your worth as like a human being on is correct, is just like so astronomically stressful and unattainable that it's like, why would you do that? And like, even if the God of the universe like is basing his entire like status of human beings on something as arbitrary as that, like, that kind of sucks.
Almost like the, I think what you're referring to is like the prereq, like for Christianity, the like prerequisites to get to heaven, that type of thing, right?
Yeah.
And how it's so lopsided to where it's like, these specific things, handful of things get you to heaven, but then there's so many other things, and then the one big thing that sends you to hell.
Yeah, and just growing up very like Baptist and then more broadly like Protestant, there was just a lot of things that like they felt like the prerequisites just felt so weirdly specific after just kind of looking at it from a distance that it was like I couldn't reconcile that anymore. And I was like, I get why he can't, because I sure can't. But like, he still landed at a place that was more against just kind of organized religion in general.
Yeah.
Which I think I'm still in a place where I'm like, I would love to see it just work better and with more humility. If more of a tool for mutual understanding and community building, and hopefully still hinting at true things about the human experience, and hopefully like something better than this shitty life, but holding it with an open enough hand to be like, if that's not the case, then at the very least, like, the love that we're speaking about is hopefully being embodied in a physical space.
Right. Well, and that's a tough one, because you're talking about how specific religion can get, and how dividing it all becomes. And you're right, because like, personally, I can only speak on Christianity. That's what I believe. But then at the same time, I don't spend enough time as I know I should be, whether it's reading about it, whether it's specifically the Bible, or just like research and study and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And a lot of it that I lean on is that kind of faith in the divine, I guess, or faith in like, that's the whole point, is we don't, we're not supposed to see it or understand all of it. And, being in it myself, that is part of what I use to help myself be okay with it, or be like understanding. I guess, not to say that I'm like guilted into it, or like I'm forced to be in there, because it's a choice. But then you're right. Like, if you take an outsider's point of view and you want to be more, like, if you want to criticize it a little more, or if you want to be more like in the, like, if you just be specific, like black and white, like talking facts only, tangibles only, it's like, well, of course you're going to say that it's all faith, because you can't fucking explain it. Now, can you? Because that's where I was as an 18-year-old, where I was kind of going through that phase of my life. I was like, well, I'm not, like, I've never been in a spot where I've denied God, but I've been in a spot where I was like, well, is this like the thing? Is it not the thing? Like, I don't know where to lean towards it. And then, like, for me, it was always like, my life just tends to work out. Nothing has ever been perfect, myself included, and everything around me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like, my life does tend to work out better when, like, yes, I'm doing the things I'm supposed to be doing, but I'm also doing it with a faith in God, and doing it along what I believe to be true in His eyes, and like that type of thing. And that's what's more or less kept me in the line of like, okay, this is where I'm supposed to be going down the path.
Right.
But a part of me does sympathize with the critic Where it's like, yeah, like I would call shenanigans at a couple of these things too, because like no, yeah, like that's what, because yeah, I've had that kind of conversation with myself, and I've had people on the podcast, and I've spoken with people privately that explain this a lot better than I can. Where it's like, yeah, because that's the first argument. Where it's like, well, you think out of all the religions, that's the one, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the okay. Nope, okay. And I'm not educated enough to be able to refute that and bring like legitimate answer outside of what I've experienced.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
What's affected my own life.
Yeah, for sure. And that's like, yeah, like unfortunately and fortunately, like the thing about spiritual experience is like it is an experience.
Yeah.
And there's so many factors that go into that, be it culture and just what you were born into and what you have the headspace to internalize, and it's so many things. And I think there's a lot of things about, like, I don't think like every single world religion can be like perfectly synthesized, but I've heard like interesting analogies of them being basically like different experiential mountains that you have to climb. That it's not like when you climb halfway up one mountain, then you're up half all of the mountains.
Right.
Like they are different things, but they might not be like mutually exclusive.
Well, yeah, because I mean, you look at like let's talk like the big three that recognize a God based in the Middle East, right? So it's Christianity, Judaism, and the Muslim faith. Yeah, they have their similarities, and they have the similar. If you really, again, taking like the non-biased outside perspective, they have the similar anecdotes, the similar stories, right? Like I think you might want to fact check me on this, like what religion believes in the Epic of Gilgamesh, because that aligns.
I don't think they're around anymore, because that was I think Sumerians or Babylonians.
Well, because
Super old.
right, that okay,
So
but that has its roots in the Muslim faith, right? Or am I wrong about that? Because I know the Epic of Gilgamesh is a very akin story to the story of Noah from the Bible.
Yeah. And that there's like a part of it that is, and the rest of it's like just its own thing.
Exactly, it has the same foundation, But then I bring up those three because it's like, okay, obviously Christianity recognizes Jesus as the Son of God, the one way to heaven, so on and so forth.
Mesopotamian.
Yeah.
Mesopotamian.
Jesus Christ.
Did I say that right? God. Yeah.
Yeah.
But then it's like I have a couple of beers and my tongue just gets fatter. You know, it's
for
hard to
sure.
like, spit out the words. But then it's like, okay, so Christianity believes that, and then Judaism, they don't recognize Jesus as the true Son of God, but they also like they take a little bit. I could be fucking wrong about this because I know that the Catholics pray to saints, right?
Sort of on behalf as like midway.
There's a middleman.
So they pray to it's. From what I understand, it's praying to saints so they pray to God for you better than you would.
Right, exactly. But then for the Muslim faith, it's they recognize Jesus as a prophet. Like he was a prophet, but God
and I think a lot of like Jews you would ask would say like Jesus was a rabbi.
Right.
And they just don't agree. They don't agree with any of
because of what he said was heresy, saying that I'm the Son of God. Right? And then for the Muslim faith, it's same thing. He's a prophet, but the true like the true I don't want to say middleman because that's almost like disrespectful to that faith, but it's like the true conduit to God was Muhammad.
Yeah.
Because God appeared himself to Muhammad, and
from what I understand, then like different sort of ideas of Islamic eschatology, it's kind of
whoa, that's a big fucking word. What is that?
Oh, that's
mean?
like end time shit.
Okay. Eschatology.
I think different, and again, I could be wrong here, so I do apologize to any Muslim people who are listening who might be misrepresented, but as I think in different strains, it's kind of like in different end time scenarios, it's like Jesus might come back actually as sort of like a precursor to end times things, but he's still just a prophet, or Muhammad in some way might do that too. I don't exactly know, but I guess all of this to say Yeah, there's a lot of weird specific variation.
Yeah, like
in different factions.
Like the further you get into it, the more the more hyper specific it comes for that faith, and that's where all your divide comes in. And all this came out of like it is, you know, it's good to hear and it's reassuring to see that when that traumatic event happened for you and your family, that your brother and you found a way to meet in the middle. I would say, in a lot of like, is it good to agree with people? 100%, but it's almost more telling of character when you can meet in the middle.
Yeah,
because
and when you can disagree and still hold some commonality that's more important than your disagreement.
No, exactly. Because if obviously there's exceptions, but like when people agree a little bit too much, there's obviously some conceding going on, and there's some like forsaking of belief almost, where it's like, yeah, I guess that is bullshit. Whatever. I'll either I now believe what you believe because you overpowered me somehow, or I'll just say it and verbally discredit what I actually believe just to pacify you.
Yeah.
But when it comes to meeting in the middle, it's like, no, I believe what I believe, you believe what you believe. But again, that does not come like the arrogance that gets attached to a belief does not come before the relationship we have.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's important.
Yeah, like intellectual humility is like a term that I really, really like, and something that I would love to try to model my life around a bit of. Just, I think what I think, but I want to be very open on most things to being wrong.
Yeah. That's how you learn.
Yeah.
That's how you learn.
Exactly. And I think there's so many things in recent history that we can see of like wishing that I think public figures and institutions would be more willing to admit that they're wrong, because I think that's how good science works. Yeah. It's like I think a lot of people look at the way that, you know, COVID was handled and stuff and can point to a lot of really bad ways of how the science was communicated, which like a lot of people...
That's a soft way of putting it.
Yeah.
That's a real soft way of putting it.
Like, there's just certain things, especially with something like that, of like, everybody's just kind of trying to make sense of the data as it emerges. Yeah. And that includes scientists who are experts at this stuff. And they're trying to figure it out. And then that gets filtered through a media lens on both sides. And then that ends up causing, like, weird tension with stuff. But, like, yeah, like, you saw with COVID and stuff, different things of, like, everybody thought, oh, like, it's on surfaces and stuff. And that's how it's being spread at the beginning and stuff. And then that turned out to be wrong. And, like, it turned out to be wrong. Like, that's kind of how stuff works. That's how science works. Yep. And with how fast like COVID was emerging and stuff, like it was just unfortunate that I don't think like that framework was really explained explicitly ever. It was just like, we're the experts and this is how it is. And then if something came up that would refute that, they wouldn't really acknowledge like we were wrong about this thing. It would just be like, here's the next thing. Yeah. And then that really disheartened a lot of people who are like, scientists should know everything all the time. Right. But it's like, that's not how it works.
The whole point of science is to be disproven.
Yeah.
That's the whole point. All right, let's see what he pulled up and we'll get out of here.
So this whole topic of religion reminded me of a scene in The Good Place.
Yes.
Where talking about like who got religion like the most right. And it just, Where's the thing?
So who was right? I mean, about all of this.
Well, let's see. Hindus are a little bit right. Muslims a little bit. Jews, Christians, Buddhists. Every religion guessed about 5%. Except for Doug Forsett.
Who's Doug Forsett?
Well, Doug was a stoner kid who lived in Calgary during the 1970s. One night he got really high on mushrooms, and his best friend Randy said, "Hey, what do you think happens after we die?" And Doug just launched into this long monologue where he got like 92%. We couldn't believe what we were hearing.
I love The Good Place. I feel like that's one of my favorite shows that's come out recently. Oh man.
That's funny, man.
If before we go, I can
Yeah.
stan any like couple things. Okay, so as far as like sort of like the world policy kind of stuff, there's a really like just fun and like YouTube channel called Hoser, S-O-E, wait, S, oh my God, Hoser, that he has like they're just fun and really short and like are really helpful in kind of thinking about world affairs in terms of resources, and things like that. I think that's like a really interesting watch. And then just check out my band Dymer, that we didn't talk about, which I'm okay with because just if I don't know, it's like hard alternative rock-ish. So if that sounds fun, then go listen to that.
Yeah, man. Yeah, we didn't even get to talk about your fucking band, so I guess that's gonna
Dude,
be.
I don't care.
That's gonna be part 2 in the next time you come around. This was a pleasure. This was an absolute fucking blast to sit down together. We talked about a lot of shit that I didn't even think we were gonna talk about, but that's the fucking beauty of doing this, right?
Love it.
Springer, thank you for producing on such a short notice.
Thanks, I don't know what I'm doing.
I appreciate it. And I appreciate everyone watching and sticking with the technical difficulties. I think after this happening and the last one happened, I think I know what the audio issue is, so I just have to do a couple of checks again before we do the next one. So I've got 3 next week, so I'll be sure to get that taken care of. But yes, where can everyone find your band, your socials? Where can they find all that shit?
Yeah, for sure. So we're primarily active on Instagram, and the Instagram handle is just Dymer Band, and Dymer is Dymer, and then band on Instagram. And then we're on Spotify, so just look up Dymer on Spotify. It's technically like a Slavic rapper named like Dymer Skworvek, but we're the one with like that either just says Dymer, it has like a little like black and white face on it. So yeah, just do that, and we're on YouTube too if you want that, or all the other platforms.
Fuck yeah, man. Well, like I said, this was an absolute pleasure. Thank you again to everyone listening and watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.